There is a certain kind of cold that has nothing to do with the weather. I felt it on a Monday in late October, standing in the parking garage of Richmond Children's Medical Center at 6:15 in the morning, staring at a bundle of white lilies laid across my windshield, exactly the way they had been laid there every single Monday for 12 years. I want you to understand what I mean when I say every Monday. Not most Mondays, not the ones that happen to line up. Every Monday for 12 years, rain or shine, holiday or hospital lockdown, 3 white lilies wrapped in plain brown paper and tied once with plain white string have been waiting on my windshield before I ever reach my car. No note, no name, no explanation. For 12 years I told myself it was a mistake, and then I told myself it was a kindness I didn't need to solve. And then, somewhere around year 4, I simply stopped asking and let it become part of my life, the way you stop noticing the sound of your own heartbeat. But that Monday in October, there was something tucked beneath the string that had never been there before. A small folded card, and written on it, in handwriting I did not recognize, but that made the hair rise on the back of my neck anyway, were 7 words. I think it's time you knew. 12 years of silence, broken in a single sentence, on a morning that started like every other one before it. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Renee Winters. I'm 43 years old, a pediatrician, and I have spent more than 2 decades of my life learning how to stay calm when everything around me is falling apart. I have delivered bad news to parents in hallway corners because there was no private room left. I have held a child's hand through the worst night of a family's life and gone home afterward, and made sure my own children had clean uniforms for school the next morning. Staying composed is not a personality trait for me. It is a professional skill I built brick by brick, and that Monday, standing in that garage with a card shaking slightly in my hand, I felt it crack for the first time in longer than I could remember. 3 questions took hold of me before I even got into my car. Who had been leaving lilies on my windshield every Monday for 12 consecutive years without once stepping forward to take credit for it? Why choose this particular Monday, of all the 624 Mondays that had come before it, to finally break the silence? And underneath those 2, a third question I was almost afraid to ask myself. Was there a reason, buried somewhere in my own life, that I had never once tried very hard to find out? I did not know yet that answering those 3 questions would take me back through a case file I had spent 12 years trying not to reopen, that it would put a strain on my marriage I did not see coming, and that it would end with me standing across from a man whose face I had seen only once before, on the worst night of his life, a night I had never fully let myself remember, until he decided it was finally time that I did. To understand why a bundle of lilies could undo me the way it did, you have to understand a little about the life I had built around the version of myself that doesn't get undone easily. I am a pediatrician at Richmond Children's Medical Center, and I have been for the better part of 15 years. Before that, I trained in another city entirely, in a residency program that worked me to the bone and taught me almost everything I know about the exact moment a parent's face changes when they understand, before you've even finished the sentence, that the news is bad. My husband is Nathaniel, and we have been married for 17 years. He is steady in a way I have always needed, and occasionally resented, an accountant by trade, a man who likes explanations and spreadsheets and does not, as a rule, enjoy mysteries showing up on the hood of our car. We have 2 children. Our daughter Nora is 15 and has recently decided that most things I say are either embarrassing or unnecessary, which I am told is developmentally appropriate and does not make it sting any less. Our son, Elijah, is 8 and still thinks I hang the moon, which I try to enjoy while it lasts. My mother-in-law, Geraldine, and my father-in-law, Harold, live 20 minutes away and have opinions about nearly everything I do, delivered with just enough love mixed in that I can never fully hold it against them. None of them knew about the Lilies. Not really. Nathaniel had noticed them exactly twice over the years, both times early on, and both times I had waved it off with some version of probably a mix-up with another car until he stopped asking. It became, without either of us discussing it, one of those small, unexplained corners of a marriage that everyone has, the kind you leave alone because pulling on it seems like more trouble than it's worth. I told myself the same thing. I told myself it 700 times over 12 years, or however many Mondays that adds up to, and every single time I believed it a little less. Here is the part I hadn't told anyone, not even Nathaniel, not in all those years. 12 years ago, before I transferred to Richmond Children's, I worked a punishing overnight shift in the emergency department of a hospital 2 states away, still finishing the last stretch of my residency. It was the kind of night where 3 critical cases arrive within 20 minutes of each other, and you learn, in real time, exactly how many directions one person can be pulled before something breaks. One of those cases was a woman in her early 30s, brought in with a sudden and catastrophic complication that gave us almost no time and even less warning. She had a daughter at home, not yet 2 years old. I remember the daughter's name before I remember almost anything else about that night, because her father said it over and over in the hallway while we worked, like saying it might somehow reach back into the room and change what was happening inside it. I saved the daughter. I want to say that clearly, because it matters to everything that came after. The baby had been rushed in as well, in distress of her own, and I was able to stabilize her within the hour. Her mother, I could not save. I have carried both of those facts, side by side, every day since. The win and the loss, occupying the exact same 20 minutes of my life, refusing to separate themselves, no matter how many years passed. I left that hospital 8 months later. I told myself it was for the job at Richmond Children's, for a better program, for a fresh start with Nathaniel, as we planned our own family. All of that was true. It was also true that I had never once, in 12 years, allowed myself to look up what had happened to that little girl, or to the father who had said her name, like a prayer in a hallway I still see sometimes, with my eyes open. I did not connect any of this to the Lilies. Not for years. It wasn't until that card appeared, 7 words in handwriting I didn't recognize, that the 2 halves of my life, the one I lived out loud and the one I had quietly sealed shut, finally, unavoidably, touched. I did not go into work that Monday. I sat in my car in the garage for 11 minutes with the engine off, reading those 7 words over and over. I think it's time you knew, as if repetition might change their meaning, or reveal a signature, or make the handwriting suddenly familiar. It didn't. Eventually I called the charge nurse. told her I'd been delayed by a family matter, and drove home instead, the Lilies sitting in the passenger seat like a passenger of their own. Nathaniel was still in the kitchen when I walked in, which should have told me something, since he is normally out the door for work by then. He took one look at my face and set down his coffee. "You're white as a sheet," he said. "What happened?" I put the lilies and the card on the counter between us. I hadn't planned what I would say. 12 years of practiced silence doesn't undo itself gracefully, and what came out was clumsy and half-formed. Something about a mystery that had been going on longer than I'd ever admitted. Something about not wanting to worry him. Something about not fully understanding it myself. I watched his face move through confusion, then concern, then something harder that I recognized before he even said it. 12 years, Renee. His voice was quiet, in the way that scares me more than shouting ever could. Someone has been leaving you flowers every single week for 12 years, and you never once mentioned it to me. What exactly was I supposed to think when I found out this way? I understood the shape of his fear, even as I resented it. 17 years of marriage teaches you exactly which of your spouse's old wounds a thing like this can reopen, and Nathaniel's father had walked out on Geraldine for another woman decades before I ever entered the family, a story I'd heard in fragments over holiday dinners. To Nathaniel, an anonymous admirer showing up for over a decade wasn't a mystery. It was a shape he already recognized, and I could see him fitting it onto me in real time, no matter how many times I said the word patient instead of the word he was clearly thinking. "It's not what you're imagining," I told him. "I don't know who it is. I never asked. I thought if I ignored it, it would eventually stop being strange." 12 years is not ignoring something, Renee. 12 years is a routine. He wasn't wrong, and that was the worst part. I need you to find out who this is. Today, if you can. Because I can't live with this hanging over us, wondering every Monday morning. If you've ever kept a small secret in a marriage a little too long, even an innocent one, you already know exactly the feeling I'm describing. And if this story has you leaning in already, share it with someone who'd understand that feeling, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had a mystery like this show up in your own life. I promised him I would. I meant it when I said it, though I didn't yet understand what finding out would actually cost either of us. The florist's stamp was still faintly visible on the brown paper wrapping, half smudged from years apparently pressed under the same string, tied the same careful way each time. Barnes and Bloom, a small independent shop I recognized from a strip of storefronts not far from the hospital, one I'd driven past 1,000 times without ever once walking in. I went there directly from my kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes, the card folded into my coat pocket, like something that might dissolve if I wasn't careful with it. The woman behind the counter introduced herself as Adrienne Barnes, the shop's owner for going on 20 years. When I laid the brown paper and the card on her counter and asked whether she recognized the order, something shifted behind her eyes. Not surprise, but the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting a long time for a question they always knew was coming. "I wondered how long it would take," she said carefully, "before you finally walked through that door. You know who's been sending these." She was quiet for a moment, glancing toward the back office, as though checking that we were truly alone. "I filled that same standing order every single Monday for 12 years, she said, "paid a year in advance, every year, like clockwork. I was told, very clearly, from the very first order, never to include a name unless the day ever came that he decided to send one himself. She tapped the card gently with one finger. That day, apparently, is today. Then tell me who he is. Adrian hesitated, and in that hesitation, I felt the ground shift slightly beneath me, the way it does in the half-second before you understand a piece of bad news is coming. That part, she said, isn't mine to give you. I made him a promise a long time ago, and I intend to keep it, but I can tell you this much, whatever this is, it isn't the kind of thing you're bracing yourself for. It's something else entirely. And I think, if you're ready to know it, you should let him be the one to tell you himself. She slid a folded slip of paper across the counter, not the sender's name, but an address, and a single line beneath it in her own handwriting. He's expecting you might come. He said to tell you it's time. I stood there in that little shop, smelling of cut stems and refrigerated roses, and felt 12 years of careful not knowing collapse into a single address I now had to decide what to do with. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I'd even folded the slip away. It was Geraldine, my mother-in-law, who has an uncanny instinct for calling at the exact moment I least want to explain myself. Nathaniel called me, she said, without so much as a hello, which told me everything about how he was feeling. Flowers? For 12 years? And you never said a word to my son? Renee, I raised that boy to expect honesty in his own home. I won't pretend I'm not concerned. Geraldine, it isn't what it looks like. That's exactly what every woman says, right before it turns out to be exactly what it looked like. There was no malice in her voice, only the particular weariness of a woman who had lived through her own version of this story once already, with Harold's father, decades before I existed in this family at all. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm only saying Nathaniel doesn't handle uncertainty well. He never has. Whatever you find at the end of this, you tell him everything. Don't make him drag it out of you piece by piece. I promised her I would, mostly to end the call, and stood in the parking lot outside Barnes & Bloom, turning the address over in my hand, like it might rearrange itself into something less frightening. It didn't. It was a residential street, 40 minutes outside the city, in a direction I had never once had reason to drive. I called the hospital and asked for the rest of the week off. I did not, at that point, tell Nathaniel where I was going, only that I was going, and that I would explain everything the moment I understood it myself, a promise that felt thin even as I made it, and that I knew, driving out of that parking lot, with the address folded on the passenger seat, where the Lilies usually rode, I was already at risk of breaking. I did not drive straight to that address. I want to be honest about that, because it would be a cleaner story if I had, and this isn't that kind of story. I sat in a coffee shop parking lot 2 blocks from Barnes & Bloom for nearly an hour, the slip of paper on the dashboard, doing something I am professionally very good at, and personally very bad at, applying to myself, triaging my own fear. The first thing I did was call a man named Corey Odom, a private investigator I had used exactly once before, years earlier, to help my sister track down a landlord who'd disappeared with a security deposit. I told Corey everything I knew, which wasn't much: an address, a florist's careful silence, 12 years of unsigned lilies, and a case file from another state that I still hadn't allowed myself to fully reopen. I asked him to find out who lived at that address before I ever knocked on the door. I told myself it was caution. If I'm honest, it was cowardice wearing caution's coat. And Corey, God bless him, didn't call me on it. He called me back 2 hours later. The house belongs to a man named Solomon Ray, he said. 51 years old, works as a high school shop teacher. No criminal record, no complaints, nothing. Widower. His wife passed away 12 years ago. There's a daughter listed at the same address, 20 years old now, named Autumn. The name hit me before the rest of the sentence finished landing. Autumn. I hadn't let myself think that name in 12 years, and hearing it out loud, in Corey's flat professional voice, undid something in my chest that I had spent over a decade holding shut with both hands. "Renee," Corey said, when I didn't respond right away. "You still there?" I told him I was, thanked him, and sat in that parking lot a long time after we hung up, doing the arithmetic I had avoided doing for 12 years. A wife who died 12 years ago. A daughter, 20 now, who would have been 8 when her mother died. Except that math didn't work, because the baby I remembered from that hallway had been not yet 2. I ran the numbers again and understood, slowly, that Autumn hadn't been 8. She'd been not quite 2, which meant she was 20 now for a different reason entirely than the one I'd assumed. And the woman who died wasn't her mother in the way I remembered it. Or she was, and the years had simply moved forward the way years do, indifferent to how carefully I'd tried to freeze that one night in place. I hadn't gotten it wrong. I had simply never let myself do the math at all. In the meantime, things at home were fraying in a way I hadn't fully appreciated from a coffee shop parking lot 40 minutes away. Nathaniel called twice while I sat there, and I let both calls go to voicemail, telling myself I would call him back the moment I actually had something true to say. That decision, in hindsight, was its own kind of mistake. By the time I did call him back that evening, he'd already spent the day constructing an entire narrative in the silence I'd left him, one involving, among other things, a colleague at the hospital named Dr. Preston Wall, a pleasant, harmless cardiologist I'd been friendly with for years, whom Nathaniel had apparently decided, based on nothing but a single group photo from a hospital gala 2 years prior, was the obvious candidate for a secret 12-year admirer. "I looked him up," Nathaniel said flatly, when I finally called. "Preston Wall, divorced, around your age, works 2 floors up from you." "Nathaniel, it isn't Preston. I promise you, it was never Preston." "Then why won't you tell me who it is?" "Because I don't fully understand it myself yet, and I'm not going to hand you half of something true and let you build the rest out of fear." It came out harsher than I meant it, and I heard him go quiet on the other end, in a way that hurt worse than if he'd shouted, "I need 1 more day!" "Please, I will tell you everything. I promise you that. But I need to hear it from the person who's been sending it, before I repeat it secondhand and get it wrong." He didn't agree. Exactly. He didn't hang up either, which from Nathaniel, in that particular mood, was its own small mercy. That night I barely slept, and somewhere around 2 in the morning, I finally did the thing I had avoided for 12 years. I logged into the old hospital's records portal, using credentials I was startled to discover I still remembered, and pulled the archived incident report from that overnight shift. I had never once looked at it after filing it. Reading it now, in my own dark kitchen with Nathaniel asleep 2 rooms away, I found details I had let myself forget. The attending physician's notes praising the speed of the pediatric intervention, a family contact section listing a husband's name I had never let myself hold on to, and tucked at the very bottom in a different handwriting, a short addendum from a hospital chaplain who'd been present that night. Father declined counseling, said only that he intended, someday, to find a way to thank the doctor properly. Asked that her name be recorded correctly in the file. Winters. Dr. Renee Winters. I sat with that line for a long time, 12 years, and a stranger had cared enough, in the very worst hour of his life, to make sure a hospital chaplain got my name right. There was, underneath all of it, a second and smaller mystery I hadn't let myself examine. A mystery that had nothing to do with Solomon Ray, and everything to do with a pressed white flower, dried flat and nearly translucent with age, that I found tucked into the back pocket of an old coat I hadn't worn in years while I was searching my closet that same sleepless night for something appropriate to wear if I actually worked up the nerve to knock on that door. I had no memory of pressing it. I had no memory of putting it there at all, and yet there it was, exactly the same pale ivory as every lily that had ever waited on my windshield, as though some earlier version of myself had already started keeping this secret long before I understood there was one to keep. If this story has you as hooked as I still am thinking back on it, go ahead and drop a comment below and let me know, because what I found at that address the next morning was not remotely what I had braced myself for, and it changed the way I understood that entire night 12 years ago, permanently. I did clear up the Preston Wall situation, at least, before I let it fester any further. I called him directly the next morning, before my shift would have started, and asked him outright, feeling faintly ridiculous even as the words left my mouth, whether he had ever sent me flowers anonymously for reasons of his own. Preston laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee, then apologized and asked, with real concern, whether everything was all right at home. I told him it was a misunderstanding born of a very strange week, and he was kind enough not to push further, though I suspect the story will follow me around that hospital for months regardless. Small mercies. At least Nathaniel's fear had one less shadow to hide in by the time I made the drive out to Solomon Ray's address. By morning, I had made my decision. I told Nathaniel I was driving out to see a man named Solomon Ray, that I didn't yet know exactly what I would find, and that I would call him the moment I did. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't offer to come either, and I understood, pulling out of our driveway with the pressed flower tucked carefully into my coat pocket, that whatever I found at the end of that road, I would be the one who had to carry it back into our marriage and make sense of it, in a language my husband could actually trust. Nora, on her way out the door for school, paused just long enough to ask where I was going, looking so nervous. I told her it was a work thing, which wasn't entirely a lie, and she studied my face, the exact same skeptical way she studies a homework answer she suspects is wrong, before shrugging and heading for the bus. Elijah, still in his pajamas, hugged me around the waist the way he does every morning, and told me to drive safe, and I held on to that small, uncomplicated love for as long as I could before I made myself let go and get in the car. Solomon Ray's house was smaller than I'd pictured, a tidy single story with a wheelchair ramp built alongside the front steps and a garden bed of white lilies planted along the entire front walk, blooming even that late in October, which told me someone had put real effort into keeping them alive out of season. He opened the door before I'd finished knocking, as though he'd been standing just behind it, watching the street. He was a tall man, gray now at the temples, with the kind of tired, careful eyes I recognized from 12 years of delivering hard news to people who wore that exact expression afterward. For a long moment, neither of us said anything at all. "Dr. Winters," he finally said. I wondered, for years, whether I'd ever actually say that to your face. "You're Solomon Ray." He nodded and stepped aside to let me in, and that was when I saw her, a young woman in her early 20s, sitting on the living room couch, who rose the moment I crossed the threshold. She had her mother's eyes. I knew that with total certainty, though I had only seen those eyes once before, and only for a matter of seconds, 12 years ago, in a hallway I had never fully let myself walk back through until this exact moment. "This is my daughter," Solomon said. "Autumn." "I know," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. "I've known your name since you were not yet 2 years old." Autumn's eyes filled, but she didn't look away from me. "My dad talks about you every year on the anniversary," she said. "He always has. I grew up knowing there was a doctor somewhere who saved my life the same night my mom died. I just never knew you were the one still getting the flowers." We sat. Solomon made tea, neither of us drank, and slowly, in the unhurried way of a man who has clearly rehearsed this conversation in his head 100 times and still can't quite say it easily, he told me what I had spent 12 years too afraid to ask. "My wife's name was Marlene," he said. "She loved lilies, grew them in every yard we ever had, even the ones with terrible soil that had no business growing anything. The night she died, you were the one who came out into that hallway afterward, and I remember exactly what you said to me, word for word, because I have replayed it more times than I can count. You didn't give me false comfort. You didn't tell me it would be all right. You told me the truth, as gently as you possibly could, and then you told me Autumn was stable, and that she was going to live, and you said it like you meant every single word of it, with your whole chest. I don't know if you remember saying that. I have never forgotten it." I told him, honestly, that I hadn't remembered the exact words, only the weight of the night itself, which I had carried differently, as a loss I hadn't been able to prevent, not a gift I had somehow given. "That's the thing," Solomon said, leaning forward. "I spent the first year after Marlene died, furious at God, furious at the hospital, furious at myself, for 100 reasons that made no sense even to me. But I was never furious at you, not for one single day. You gave me my daughter, and I couldn't find you to thank you properly. You'd transferred hospitals within the year, and I didn't have the right words yet, or the strength to go looking, so I did the only thing that felt true. Marlene loved lilies. I started leaving them somewhere I thought you'd eventually find them, the same day of the week, every week, for as long as it took me to work up the courage to actually knock. 12 years is a long time to work up courage, I said, gently. 12 years is exactly how long it took Autumn to grow old enough to ask me why I still did it, he said, and to tell me it was time I stopped hiding behind flowers and said the words out loud instead. Before we go any further into what happened next, if this story is hitting you the way it hit me living through it, do me a favor and hit that like button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what Dr. Winters faces next, because what Autumn told me in that living room changed something in me I hadn't expected to still be capable of changing, 12 years and 100 hard shifts later. There are mornings that arrive like an unexpected gift, soft, unhurried, where you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be. She said if anything happened to her, she wanted the doctor who fought for her baby to have it. It got lost in the chaos of that night, filed with the wrong paperwork, and my dad only found it 3 years ago, going through old hospital records he'd requested for a life insurance claim. We've had it ever since, waiting for the day we finally found you. She reached into a drawer in the side table and handed me a small yellowed envelope, my name misspelled slightly on the front, in a shaking, hurried hand. Dr. Renee Winter. One letter short of my own name, written by a dying woman in the middle of the worst night of her life, thinking not of herself, but of the stranger trying to save her child. My hands were shaking too badly to open it right there in front of them. I asked Solomon and Autumn if they would forgive me for waiting, for needing to be alone with whatever Marlene had written before I let myself react to it in front of the 2 people who had waited 12 years to hand it to me. Solomon nodded, unsurprised, as though he had expected exactly that. "Take your time," he said. "We've had it 3 years. A few more hours won't change what's inside it." I read Marlene's letter alone, sitting in my car outside Solomon's house, unwilling to drive even a single mile until I understood what she had wanted to tell me. The handwriting grew shakier toward the end, the ink pressed harder in places, as though she'd been fighting to keep her hand steady. She didn't write about fear. She wrote about her daughter, hopes for the kind of person Autumn might grow into, a wish that she'd love fiercely and stubbornly, the way her mother had, a request, almost an instruction, that whoever was fighting for her baby in that room not carry any guilt forward if the night went the way she suspected it might. "You cannot lose what you never had power over," she had written, in a hand that barely held together by the final line. "Whatever happens to me, you gave my daughter every chance a person could give another. That is not a small thing. Please let yourself believe that, someday, even if it takes you longer than it should." I sat with that letter for a long time before I trusted myself to drive. Here is the reversal I did not see coming, and the reason this story doesn't end the way I expected it to when I first knocked on Solomon's door. I went home prepared to tell Nathaniel everything. The case, the letter, Marlene, Autumn, all 12 years of it, certain that once I laid it all out plainly, the tension of the last 3 days would simply dissolve, the way it does in the stories we tell ourselves about how honesty is supposed to work. It didn't dissolve, not entirely, and not immediately. Nathaniel listened to the whole thing at our kitchen table, and I watched him absorb it in stages. Relief first, that there was no other man, no threat to what we'd built together, and then something more complicated arriving right behind the relief, a quiet hurt that took me longer to understand than I expected it to. 12 years, Renee, he said, when I finished. You carried something this heavy, alone, for 12 years, and you never once let me help you carry it. I'm not angry there wasn't another man. I'm angry you decided, on your own, that this wasn't something I got to know about. That's a different kind of secret than the one I was afraid of, but it's still a secret. He wasn't wrong, and I didn't try to argue him out of it. I told him the truth instead, that some of what a person carries from years of doing this job doesn't come with an easy door in, that I hadn't fully understood the weight of that night myself until Solomon and Autumn handed it back to me whole, and that I was still learning, 17 years into our marriage, how to let him all the way into the corners I'd spent a lifetime learning to seal off on my own. It was not a conversation that fixed itself in one evening. We are still, as I tell you this, working through what it means to trust each other with the weight neither of us saw the other one carrying, and I think that's honest, and I think it's more true to how marriages actually heal than any tidier version of this story would be. Solomon and Autumn came to dinner 3 weeks later, at Nathaniel's invitation, not mine, which told me something about where he had landed in his own reckoning with all of it. Geraldine, predictably, had opinions about a stranger, and his grown daughter joining our table on a Sunday, until she heard the full story and went uncharacteristically quiet, excusing herself to the kitchen partway through dinner, where I found her a few minutes later, dabbing at her eyes with a dish towel, muttering that she'd raised her own son on stories of losing people too suddenly, and understood, better than she'd let on, exactly what that kind of grief could do to a person's silence. Autumn and Nora, it turns out, are only 5 years apart, and discovered within 20 minutes of meeting that they follow several of the same shows online, a small, ordinary connection that felt enormous to me, watching two girls whose lives had been shaped by that same hallway, 12 years apart, laughing together at my kitchen table like it was nothing at all. The Lilies still arrive every Monday. Solomon told me, over that first dinner, that he intends to keep sending them, not out of secrecy anymore, but because the ritual itself had become its own kind of prayer, and he wasn't ready to let go of it just because the mystery behind it was solved. I understand that now, in a way I couldn't have 12 years ago. Some griefs don't close neatly. Some debts of gratitude don't ever fully feel repaid, no matter how many years pass or how many dinners get shared. I still don't know, honestly, whether Solomon should have found a way to reach me sooner, sparing us both 12 years of silence, or whether the slow, careful pace of it was its own necessary kind of healing, for him, and it turns out, for me too, in ways I hadn't let myself notice until a card appeared under a bundle of white lilies on an ordinary Monday in October. Elijah asked me, a few nights after that first dinner, why a stranger would spend 12 years being kind to someone without ever asking for anything back. I didn't have a clean answer for an 8-year-old, so I told him the truth, as best I understood it myself, that some people carry a debt of gratitude so large it doesn't fit into words, so they find some other shape for it instead, a shape that can survive 12 years of silence without ever once demanding to be seen. He thought about that for a while, the way he does, and then asked if we could plant lilies of our own in the backyard, so that when he grew up, if anyone ever did something that important for him, he'd already know what to do about it. I told him that sounded like exactly the right idea, and we ordered the bulbs the following weekend, from Barnes & Bloom, of course, where Adrienne finally let herself smile at me, the way she'd clearly been waiting years to do. I've told you a lot of stories from my life over the time you've spent with me, but this one sits differently in my chest than most of the others, because there was no villain in it anywhere. No one lied to hurt me. No one betrayed my trust for their own gain. There was just a grieving father, a promise he wasn't ready to keep out loud yet, and 12 years of silence that meant something different to every single person it touched. I still find myself turning the question over, even now. Was Solomon right to wait 12 years, protecting himself and protecting me from a grief neither of us was fully ready to face, until his own daughter was old enough to push him toward the truth? Or did that silence cost all of us something we can't fully get back? Years where Nathaniel carried a private fear he didn't need to carry. Years where I told myself a story about that hallway that wasn't the whole truth. Years where Autumn grew up without ever getting to meet the doctor her father spoke of every single anniversary. I don't have a clean answer, and if I'm honest with you, I'm not sure there is one. I'd genuinely love to know what you think, because I think the honest answer is different, depending on which one of us in that story you happen to relate to most. So here's what I'm asking. If this story moved you even a little, hit that like button before you go. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. Leave a comment, and tell me honestly whether you think Solomon should have found a way to reach me sooner, or whether some gratitude needs exactly as much time as it takes. If you know someone in your own life who's ever carried a silent debt like that, quietly, for years, without ever finding the right moment to say it out loud, send this video their way. Sometimes a story like this is the nudge someone needs to finally have that conversation themselves. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next in my life, because my story is far from finished, and there is always another chapter waiting. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you're here for it when it arrives. And before you go, do me one more small favor. Tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching this from tonight. I read every single one, and it means more to me than you probably realize to know how far these stories travel and how many different lives they somehow manage to reach. Thank you for sitting with me through this one. I'll see you in the next chapter.